A billionaire CEO laughed at a black janitor for touching the company piano. But what happened next silenced the entire boardroom. The crystal clinking of wine glasses and the elegant laughter of the elite echoed through the golden hall of the Grand Aurora Hotel, where Silver Cord Records was hosting the launch party for its new line of musical products. Every powerful figure in the industry was there: executives, investors, and A-list artists from around the world. On stage, under dazzling lights, stood a pristine white grand piano, valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars. In a quiet corner of the room, Marcus Reed, a middle-aged black man dressed in a simple janitor's uniform, was quietly cleaning the stage area. Sweat dotted his forehead, but his expression remained calm and focused, as if even cleaning was a melody he performed with his heart. When Marcus's hand gently brushed across the piano keys to wipe off a thin layer of dust, a soft, delicate note echoed through the air, simple, yet enough to make a few guests turn their heads. Edward Hawthorne, the CEO of Silver Cord, a powerful white man, walked over. He held a glass of champagne, his lips curling into a cold smile. "Careful there, Marcus," he said loudly enough for the group of executives to hear. "That piano is worth more than your annual salary." Laughter erupted across the room, sharp, cruel, like blades slicing through the air. Marcus froze, his hands still resting on the piano. He forced a small smile, nodded slightly, and said nothing, but as the lights reflected off his face, there was a flicker in his eyes, deep, distant, like a story no one had ever heard. None of them knew that this moment of humiliation would mark the beginning of a night they would never forget. A night when music would not only rise from the keys, but from the heart of a man who had once been overlooked. Marcus Reed, 42 years old, a slender man, his uniform always carrying faint gray stains of dust, his hands rough and scarred from years of hard labor, the same hands that once danced across piano keys in his dreams. He was born in East Detroit, where car horns and gunshots blended with the jazz tunes drifting from an old bar at the end of the street. Marcus grew up in poverty but carried a rare gift, a perfect ear for music. As a teenager, he could hear a song once and play it flawlessly on the old church piano. That talent earned him a partial scholarship to Berklee College of Music, a dream everyone in his neighborhood believed he would make come true. But life did not follow the rhythm of his dreams. At 20, his wife, pregnant at the time, was diagnosed with a congenital heart condition. Tuition, medicine, rent, everything came crashing down at once. Marcus was forced to leave school, set aside his piano, and step into the working world. He lifted boxes, washed dishes, worked night shifts at warehouses, anything that could bring in money. Years passed, and the dream of music survived only in the lullabies he played in his mind while rocking his son to sleep. When his boy was old enough to start elementary school, Marcus moved his family to New York, hoping to start anew, but the city was unforgiving to a middle-aged black man without a degree. The only job he could find was cleaning offices at a major music corporation, Silver Cord Records, the same name he had once dreamed of signing with as an artist. Every night, after everyone had left the building, Marcus would stay a few minutes longer. He would sit at the piano in the recording studio, gently rest his fingers on the keys, and play old melodies, not loud, not perfect, just enough to remind himself that the dream still lived. No one in the company knew about it, except Renee, the young receptionist who sometimes stayed late and quietly listened through the slightly open door. To her, Marcus was more than a janitor. He was living proof that true talent can be forgotten, but never erased. And on that fateful night, it would be Renee who unintentionally set off the moment that made the entire Silver Cord Records fall silent. That evening's party was not just a celebration of Silver Cord's record-breaking revenue, but also the grand unveiling of an ambitious creation, Ava X, an AI piano capable of composing music on its own. On stage, CEO Edward Hawthorne stood beneath the lights, his proud voice echoing, "Ladies and gentlemen, the future of music is here. A piano that doesn't need feelings because it's perfect. Applause erupted, fake smiles bloomed around the tables. Behind the stage, Renee was rearranging wine glasses when she overheard Edward's boast. She whispered to a colleague, "Perfect, if only he heard Marcus play sometimes." But her words accidentally reached Edward's ears. He turned, eyes narrowing with amusement, as if he had just discovered a new toy. "Oh really?" Edward raised an eyebrow. "Our janitor can play the piano." His tone was mocking, stretched with sarcasm. The executives around him laughed loudly. Edward signaled for the music to stop, then called out, "Ladies and gentlemen, looks like we have some hidden talent in the cleaning crew tonight." Marcus, who had been clearing glasses in the corner, froze. Every gaze in the room turned toward him. Edward continued, his voice laced with mockery. "Marcus, why don't you show us your skills? Let's see if you can beat our smart piano." Marcus hesitated. He smiled politely and shook his head. "I'm just here to clean, sir." But Edward wouldn't let it go. "Come on, Marcus, don't worry, we won't laugh too hard unless you mess it up." Laughter filled the glittering hall once again. Renee lowered her head, her hands trembling as she gripped the glass. At that moment, Marcus's silence was no longer humility. It was a gathering storm waiting to break. None of the people in that luxurious room knew. They had just invited a forgotten soul to take the stage. And when Marcus touched the piano keys, nothing would ever be the same again. The room fell into complete silence. Marcus stood still for a few seconds, his eyes scanning the crowd, a sea of people waiting to laugh at a joke they had already decided he would become. Then he took a deep breath, placed his cleaning cloth on the table, and walked slowly toward the gleaming white piano. His dark gray janitor's uniform glimmered awkwardly under the chandelier lights, out of place among the golden elegance of the elite. Yet Marcus's steps did not falter. He moved toward the piano like a man reuniting with an old friend. He sat down. Around the room, muffled giggles stirred. A guest whispered, "This should be fun." Edward stood with arms crossed, a smug grin on his face, waiting for Marcus to humiliate himself. Marcus placed his hands on the keys. The first note came out, shaky, hesitant, like the breath of someone touching the long-lost memory. A few more chuckles slipped through the air. But then, within a few beats, those hands began to move. Smooth, powerful. The music shifted, no longer timid, but rich, alive, and full of soul. Marcus was playing Take 5 by Dave Brubeck, a jazz classic, but transformed into something new, complex, bold, and overflowing with emotion. His fingers danced across the keys so fast it looked like he was chasing his own past. The laughter stopped. Faces that once sneered now stared in disbelief. Renee covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. And Edward, who had mocked Marcus just moments ago, stood frozen, the glass in his hand trembling. Marcus closed his eyes. He was no longer playing for them. He was playing for himself, for a youth cut short, for a wife lost too soon, for all the cold nights working beside metal dumpsters, and for the little boy who once asked, "Dad, were you really a musician?" The music swelled, then softened, like a prayer. Each note a fragment of his life, painful, but beautiful. The sound filled the space, echoing off the walls and dissolving into the air, soft yet deep, reaching out as if to touch every heart in the room. When the final note faded, Marcus stayed still, his head bowed slightly. The room remained silent, no one dared speak. Then, from the far corner, a single clap echoed. Renee, she stood, her eyes red and glistening. Moments later, the entire room seemed to awaken. Applause erupted, thunderous and genuine, without a trace of pretense. A guest whispered, That was not just music, that was his life." Marcus raised his head. His eyes were calm, yet deep, like a lake after a storm. And in that moment, the man once dismissed as just a janitor had made the world fall silent in reverence. The applause continued, echoing as if the room itself refused to let go. Marcus stood and gave a slight bow of gratitude. There was no pride on his face, only a gentle smile and misty eyes, the eyes of someone who had endured too much pain, yet still chose to forgive. Edward Hawthorne remained still, his face flushed red. He forced out a weak smile, his voice slightly trembling. Impressive. Marcus did not know we had such hidden talents in the cleaning crew. The room went quiet. That hollow compliment dropped like a stone, heavy and meaningless. Marcus looked at him, no longer with fear, but with quiet composure. He spoke slowly, enunciating each word clearly. "Talent does not care what uniform you wear, sir." The words rang out like a bell in the night. The room held its breath. Then came another round of applause, louder, stronger, not for the performance this time, but for the truth just spoken. Edward lowered his head. The smile disappeared from his face, replaced by visible shame. Those who had once laughed at Marcus now could not meet his gaze. Renee stepped forward and gently placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. She whispered, "You just reminded them what real music sounds like." From the crowd emerged an older man with silver hair and round glasses. It was Mr. Vega, the legendary music producer known for discovering great talents. He smiled warmly and extended his hand. "If you ever want to play in a real studio, call me." Marcus paused for a moment, then shook his hand carefully, as if afraid he might shatter the dream that had just returned after so many years. Renee looked at him and softly said, "I told you, they just had not heard you yet." Behind them, Edward stood in silence. Power, money, fame, all of it seemed so small now, standing before a man in a janitor's uniform, with the heart of a true artist. And as Marcus stepped off the stage, every gaze followed, no longer with condescension, but with pure, humbled respect. That night, music did more than change a party. It changed the way people saw one another. Within a single night, the video of Marcus's performance spread across social media like wildfire. One guest had managed to record it on their phone. The only caption under the clip read, "The janitor who made the world listen." In just 48 hours, the video had millions of views and hundreds of thousands of comments flooding every platform. People began calling him by a new name, the Janitor Maestro. Viewers around the world shared the clip, adding their own messages. This is what real music feels like. Marcus became a symbol, a reminder that talent and dignity are never defined by the color of your skin or the job you do. Television networks reached out for interviews. Record labels offered him deals. But Marcus kept his life simple. He only agreed to perform at community events and fundraisers, one supporting music education for underprivileged kids. Children forgotten by society, just like he once was. When asked why he turned down big contracts, he simply smiled and said, "Because I am already playing the music I was meant to play." Meanwhile, Silver Cord Records faced a wave of public outrage. News articles and video commentaries flooded the internet, exposing how the company and CEO Edward Hawthorne had treated Marcus. Edward was forced to issue a public apology, standing in front of cameras and stating he was deeply sorry for his disrespectful behavior. But what people remembered was not that apology. It was Marcus's calm response. "I'm not angry, I just wanted to remind people that greatness can come from anywhere." That evening, Marcus returned to his modest apartment in the Bronx. On the old wooden table sat a second-hand upright piano, quietly waiting. He sat down. Beside him, his young son watched with eager eyes. "Dad, can you teach me that song?" the boy asked. Marcus smiled and placed his son's hands gently on the keys. "Of course, son, but remember, do not just play the notes. Play your story." The light from the window cast a warm glow over their faces. The music began, slow, gentle, heartfelt. Not loud, not flashy, but so honest, it made you believe. Some dreams never die. They're just waiting to be touched again.